And action, and welcome everybody. This is PnP Weekly episode 168. It is 13th of May, so it is June pretty soon, which is June pretty soon. Ooh, that sounded good.
Wow, you're rhyming.
Yes. Summer is coming. This is so good. Today we'll meet with Sébastien Levert, or Seb, who's actually leading the work related on Microsoft Graph Toolkit, so the controls which are natively connected to Microsoft Graph. And what else are we going to talk about today? The latest on Microsoft Build.
Well,
right?
Seb also leads Microsoft JS SDK, so it will be on both ends interesting to hear about what's happened the last few months, where we are, where we're going, and so forth and so on. And we haven't really talked to him since he went to this role, so it will be interesting to hear from him how he experienced moving in this or becoming PM in Graph and owning two products.
And on top of that, he just got a baby, so he's been away for a while, but now coming back and been working for a while. So it's actually good to hear about that one as well. So balancing out the family and work, right?
New. Yes.
No. So in the PnP Weekly, I always talk about the latest on Microsoft 365. We have a visitor, like said. This week is Sébastien Levert. My name is Vesa Juvonen. I'm a product manager in the Microsoft 365 platform. And with me as a co-host is Waldek.
Good day, everybody. My name is Waldek Mastykarz, and I'm cloud developer advocate for Microsoft 365 at Microsoft.
Excellent. So with further ado, let's jump on the interview with Seb. So welcome, Sébastien Levert, on the show. I have no idea when you were here last time. You've been in the show before.
So 100, I guess. I think
I was hosting episode 100, and that was
100% correct.
Yeah, and I was on the other side of the house back then.
That's true. So you kind of missed to be the guest because you were the host, right?
Exactly. I don't even know if I've been a guest before.
Yes, you've been guest. This is the third time you are on a show, and it's like
oh my god.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a wrong scheduling then. Can we get somebody else for that? So why are we?
Well, because it's been way back when. I think the first time you were on episode 30 or 60, so already way back when. Yeah. And then on 100, you were the host, which reminds me, we need to get you back on 200, which is going to be in 30 weeks.
32.
Roughly,
we have a summer break. We will have a summer break, so it's okay. We're not like AC and CJ, so we went through every week.
Dedication.
So.
They call dedication. We're apparently not.
No, absolutely. That's the thing. Yes, that is absolutely the thing. Now, before we actually get moving on, Seb, can you do a quick intro as who you are and what are you doing nowadays for a living?
Yes, so my name is Sébastien Levert. I am a senior product manager here at Microsoft in the Microsoft Graph organization. I'm focusing on the developer experience, so delighting developers to use Microsoft Graph tooling, documentation, and everything that really is tailored for devs that we're building here on the Graph side. I've been at Microsoft now for kind of 18 months now. It's been a long time already.
Yep. You're a senior.
Exactly. I started, gray hair. I started as a customer and partner experience PM. So I was working with customers and partners. Now I moved on to this, which basically for now today means I'm working a lot on SDKs, a lot on MGT, and all of our relationship between adaptive cards and Microsoft Graph. So those are the things that I'm working on today, and I'm having quite a bit of fun.
So is it fair to
that
say
is the
that
most
it's
important
kind
part.
of is it the transition from the ISV team is more on the ISV team? I guess it was more one-to-one engagement and one-to-one kind of helping and doing demos and proof of concepts and helping people to succeed. But now you're kind of responsible on then creating tools and SDKs and communicating broadly. Is that a fair kind of a statement?
100%. And that changes basically everything. The way that we're doing we're building relationships is very different. When you are working with ISVs, you almost become friends with these folks because you're meeting them like weekly, and you're really seeing the progress. When you're building tools, let's call it for the masses, the way you engage with these folks is very different. It's more difficult to actually get a lot of insights, but the impact is also really fun to see grow. So it's really two absolutely different roles. When I joined Microsoft, I loved my team. I started to miss a little bit building, like really building stuff from the ground up. And the last year has proven to be quite a journey to go where we are right now with our SDK story and all of that. And I'm looking forward to talk to you a little bit more about that. But definitely, building is back into my DNA, and I'm quite happy about it.
Yeah, and from historical things, like you were in an ISV building stuff as well, so it's kind of it's an exciting. Well, even as an ISV or when you're not working in Microsoft, even in Microsoft, there's always the options of doing customer one-to-one customers and partners, or then the prod. And like I said, I think when you do prod engagement and SDKs and prod communication, you don't necessarily, it's a bit more harder to get a hunch on what's actually happening, right? It's a bit more like, how's your spider senses? Is it going well or not? Because you cannot ask that question directly from the other side. Any thoughts on that? Any tips on how are you dealing with this?
Data. It's, to be honest, I would say that in my early career when I was doing product management, I wouldn't say I didn't believe in data, but I was like always, I have a close enough relationship with my customers and my partners that I can actually sense what we should be doing. When you're, let's call it a smaller ISVs, we had hundreds of customers, but hundreds of customers is not like millions of developers using your tools. Yeah. So the scale is very different. Now, one of the best source of data is, of information is collecting that data and analyzing that data. And it's been, we have like amazing telemetry on what we're building, and understanding the behaviors makes our tools better in the future, because we can finally act on areas where we don't succeed, or in areas where we see people dropping in our developer portal. People are not going where we want them to go, meaning that they don't get get the value. So it's definitely one of the, like, my advice is, first, try to measure the right thing. Don't necessarily measure everything, because if not you're like in a notion of data where you don't really know how to measure that, and measure correctly. Make sure that what you measure is right, because it's easy to see data go a little bit left and right. But once you have the data, I think you really you will be able to identify patterns. You will be able to identify areas of investment, rather than just, okay, we're gonna build this. It seems like on a Monday morning, seems like the best idea I have, so let's build this.
But that's also an interesting part, right? Because like, you measure the things you have. Like, you cannot measure a feature you don't have, right? So I wonder how you balance out, well, the data says this, but your idea is about that. Like, how do you balance new ideas that you cannot prove with telemetry you have, because the feature isn't there, so there's nothing to track yet. So how do you balance that out, that kind of, the hunch you might have about a feature that you cannot prove with data yet, versus data that proves behavior?
I think this is where my past in the relationship with partners and customers come into play. We all have our groups of couple of ISVs, partners, customers that we talk to as a soundboard, right? Like, and some of them are in the secrets of Microsoft, where we can talk about stuff that we are going to release in the future, and they're under NDA. And then when we can use that forum of people to ask very specific questions to get very specific answers, or we can also ask very broad questions with a hint of what we're thinking about and listen to the answer. And this is where you realize that real life is often not what you think.
Yep.
And this is the best part of my work, is when you get on a call and you have a very, very, very good example of this is a week ago. Was it last week? Last week was Microsoft Build. And we had the opportunity to host round tables where customers were seated around the table virtually in Microsoft Teams. I still think they were all around the table, but
yeah,
whatever.
Of course they were.
Everybody was at their chunk of the circle.
Exactly. It was a weird table, but and in our SDK roundtable, we had 4 questions, super open-ending, and what we got out of this was probably worth 6 months of understanding and thinking and debating within our team. We got the real users telling us what are their real struggles rather than us kind of figuring out exactly. And there was no assumption in that call. So for honestly, these are, I think, one of the best ways to actually get a better gut feeling on it. Kind of validates your hypothesis, and then you can, okay, now we can do an experiment. Let's build this. Let's make sure that there's data in it so we can measure it. And then a couple of weeks, months later, we're like, okay, so we are on the right track. And you know what? We might be on the wrong track. And that is also okay. That's something that I learned in product management. Failing is not a result of failing. Failing is just part of the process. It's just you need to fail to succeed. So if you don't
proves
fail,
that path wasn't successful, and then and it's completely fine. It's part of the game. Like Albert Einstein said, when you have 1,000 times you try something, it's not 1,000 times failure. 999 times when it didn't work, and then the one time when it worked. So it's
Edison,
all about
with the light bulb.
Edison. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's still
Einstein had another thing, right? He said that if you keep doing the same thing, expecting different outcome, you're crazy.
That's true. Yes.
Something about trying and something about an outcome. Everything else is the same, right?
Yeah. The 1,000 different versions of the same thing outcoming a failure. So anyway, it's everything. But and that's actually kind of an interesting thing as well. That relates on the discussion we've been chatting here quite a few times, which is the minimal viable product versions, which is it's partly even frustrating for customers and partners every now and then, because they keep on saying that, well, why are you releasing the stupid feature because it's not complete? Which is like, no, this is the first version of that. And then we want your feedback so we're able to fulfill your business requirements truly. Because with all the seriousness, we don't necessarily know what the customers
That is an interesting point, right? And I mean, I worked in product a while back for a bit. And one of the hardest part was always trying to envision the next thing you wanted to build, and you wanting to avoid like talking to folks about the what ifs and what would you, because you're going to get a theory exercise. It's going to be all fun, but then at the end of the day, you will get advice that's worthless because it's not based on any actual need people have. So Seb, question to you: how do you balance that? How do you get people to think about the next thing without it becoming just a theory exercise based on hot air groupthink, and then at the end of the day you feel great, yes, I have this thing, and then you ship it and everybody is like, okay, I don't care.
I think there's multiple ways that we're actually doing it. One of the first thing we were doing, and I'm going to talk about one of the products that I own, which is the Microsoft Graph Toolkit, is we tend to ship quickly, fast, very, very small increments. Meaning that once I ship a new thing, I just ship, like, not even, like, sometimes I would not even call them V1. I will call them like experiments that you can use that are available, that are there, and then do this. And then we can measure, and we have the feedback, especially in open source communities, where people come back and say, hey, this worked, or this absolutely does not work. You're missing all of this before it even becomes useful. Having these feedback loops is super important. But if you don't put that in front of the users, they won't do it. A good example of this is, I can talk about our design for SDKs forever. If a developer cannot touch it and have like a first success to graph in less than 30 seconds, it's not gonna work. So we need to give some and that's really how I really think very deeply is, especially in our space where we're talking to developers. The developers, if we're telling them this is preview, this is not production ready, it might be a little bit broken, but here you go, have fun. They're going to be willing to take a bet and test it out a little bit. They won't be changing their entire code base to leverage it, but at least they're going to tell us, oh, that could actually be useful in my code base, yes or no. And that's what we want. So we're not looking for masses of calls to graph. We're just looking at, can you go from A to B in a way that is simpler than you used to be before, able to go from A to B. And that's really one of the ways that we're doing it. Shipping very, very simple, preview. Being open source has been a blessing, because it's so easy to distribute a package when you're in open source, rather than when you're like in internal and you need to deliver weird
print DVDs, send floppies. Yes, we are that old.
Not myself, but it's
you
definitely
work with MSDN DVDs.
I did work with MSDN DVDs.
There you
I had a full binder of MSDN DVDs back then.
Who did on this call?
So it's definitely how we approach this thing, and even this year, one of our big bet in our team is to do that even more, up to a point where we're even looking at, even for our software we're shipping, to do some A/B testing, to be able to deliver two experiences at the same time, and okay, which one wins? Which one is? And sometimes it's confusing, because sometimes both have good, are very different, but have good reception from the crowd. So now, okay, so we have two experiences that make sense. How do we bring the best of these two together?
Now you mentioned something that's really intriguing, right? Because you mentioned developer experience. Developer experience is a really broad thing, because it's another thing you said, end to end, right? So if I think about, well, it's how people discover, how they get started, how they find out more. And you might want to A/B all of that, or every single point, or combination. So it's, how do you bring that complexity into something manageable that you can track, and at the end of the day you will get a result that you can reason about, as opposed to, wow, we get a permutation of 16 things, we have no idea, we measured it, we have no idea, we're lost.
in this case, it's isolated experimentations. So we are going to say, we want to improve this specific area where we think we can do better. And then we're going to do an A/B testing on that. We would not be able to do an A/B testing of A to Z. From the first time you land on graph.microsoft.com, which is our developer portal, to your first SDK call. This journey is such a long journey that we don't want to have an A/B testing in every single options there.
Unless we can make that call directly in the portal. You go there, you press play, ta-da, that is your first call, right?
Which is kind of right?
We're actually looking at really interesting capabilities that are coming to our developer portal, where you're going to actually be able to do something very similar to that.
Oh, really? That is so cool.
But we want to do very, very specific. We have to be deliberate in what we want to measure. We can improve everything. Everything is improvable. There's not an experience anywhere that is perfect. Now, sometimes good enough is good enough, and that's something that we have to. I'm a perfectionist. I always want to go above and beyond on everything I do, but sometimes, is it really worth it? So this is the areas where we're looking at where are we losing folks, where our developers are telling us this is really hard. How many times have you heard that auth is hard? Maybe once.
Quite a few times.
No. Once.
I know one person who says auth isn't hard.
Yeah, I know that person also, and even he says, nah. So it's
right there with DNS and regex, dentist visits.
Well, I know one guy that says that regex are easy. So it's really that way that we're measuring and we're experimenting, and I think that's the way, because we own the entire journey in our team. It truly enables us to flip on the right switches based on what is the outcome that we're looking for. And I think that's the best part of our role is we're really enabled to do that as we own the entire stack, from the portal to the SDKs to the samples to the repos to everything.
There's another thing that I wonder about. Like, as you said, you can build and improve anything and everything. So in the world where you can build anything, how do you choose what thing to build?
This is bigger, right?
It is kind of, the meaning of life,
Exactly.
How do you choose? Like, what do you build?
Or how do you choose them? So,
yeah, exactly. And in which order? And
yes, exactly.
What is the priority and all that?
Yes.
I think you always have to remember who you're building for before you decide what you're building. So when we're discussing with our devs that are using some of the tooling, we want to help them being more productive, being more successful. So that's how we start. When we think about a new product or when we think about a new experience, okay, we have to make this a thing. We have to make this more productive for the dev. Based on some of the data tells us where people are hitting, what are the endpoints that they're using, and how they're using them. But it's definitely not telling us which endpoints they're not using or which endpoints they're failing at using, because it basically that's not how our telemetry works. We basically don't have a lot of that data. So this is where we become a partner with a lot of other teams at Microsoft that are working with these large organizations, partners, SIs, ISVs, whatever, and we read some of the reports and we're like, oh, there's a big gap there. And we've heard it from this partner, this partner, this partner, this partner. We correlate all of that. We weight a feedback based on the number of customers, the number of tenants, or sometimes just the number of feedbacks, like specific feedbacks. When we're hearing from 25 different partners that we should have an API that calls into this product, we have to think about why do we get 25 feedback for this product. So for SDKs, that's exactly what happened. A lot of we're in a quest right now to renew our approach to SDK. You had in the past, you discussed Kyoto with some of our PMs, and Kyoto is one of the promise that brings SDK on demand for any endpoints on Graph. And a lot of our partners were saying, my package, my SDK is so big and so broad, and the developers don't want to work with 6,000 endpoints. They want to work with the 3 endpoints we're using in our products, not everything. So we get the feedback that SDKs were too big, SDKs were too complex, there was too many endpoints. Now, what does it mean? Like, this is where our work starts. And we decide, okay, this is a priority. It's going to help us internally be more agile in ways of shipping SDKs, but also it's going to empower developers to have more flexibility and agility in the way that they generate their own SDKs. And we went there. So there's also, like, we have to remember, for this, we need to have part in our group. We need to be more productive at building SDKs also. So there's also a way, some kind of a point system that yes, internally, sometimes internal engineering counts in what we're deciding to build, because if we help ourselves, we might also help our devs.
And it's interesting to see how the evolution is changing the challenge what you have in the Microsoft Graph. Because let's face it, a while back, the challenge was not all of the APIs are in Graph, or only a subset of APIs are in Graph. Now, the API surface in Graph is just out of this world. You can
too
access
few APIs
whatever.
is bad, so then we add more APIs. Now we have too many APIs. Like, people, what do you
exactly.
want?
So now the problem is that you have so much APIs, so do you need to again rethink the next step in the pipeline. So it's an interesting evolution and a maturity level change within the organization as well, which is probably quite interesting.
Absolutely, and we're not expecting anything to slow down from a graph standpoint. Like the graph, like we're seeing teams coming to our API reviews from everywhere around our organization on a daily basis, coming in and saying, hey, we have a really cool API for Graph, would love to get it on. And sometimes this API will bring 180 new endpoints to, and it also means 180 new methods and chaining patterns in our SDKs.
And docs and users and scenarios and everything. Yeah.
So imagine when there's
chain effect,
Exactly, and samples and also something like, oh yeah, by the way, we're gonna do this, so we're gonna deprecate one of the APIs in beta, we're gonna replace it by another one, and this one will go to V1 because with customers we decided this was better than the previous approach we had. Now people have started to use it in beta, even though we say don't use that in production.
You need to manage that
communication.
Exactly.
Yes,
exactly.
Expectation management. Yeah.
And it's A to Z. So it's not only a big API. It's a big ecosystem to take care of. And I think that's what makes me the most proud of being in that team. Is the impact is huge, but the challenge is even bigger.
That was a thing I was just about to ask. Like, what do you find the most rewarding part of your job? And I guess in a way you answered that already with the scale and the impact. But is there anything else? Is there anything else you have on your mind when it comes to the really true rewarding aspect of your job?
I think that and there's one aspect, and we've seen it during build. Seeing people or talking to people is definitely where I see the most rewarding aspect of it. Is somebody came in, said, I'm a researcher. It's not necessarily the crowd we're targeting or we're aiming at usually. Like, I'm a researcher. I'm doing some crazy analytic stuff in my organization, and we're doing really, really heavy science with that data. And because of your brand new SDK, which was our Go SDK, I was able to complete my work in less than 10 days, which I told my boss would take around 6 months to get all that data.
Wow.
Because before that, we didn't have any Go SDK, so they had to go through everything. And when you're new to M365, when you've been in the business of M365 forever, Graph makes so much sense. Like, it's easy. You know where you're going. You know this message. This is this message in this inbox, and you understand exactly how it relates. Even visually, you see the data in a JSON format. You know exactly where to put that on a screen in SharePoint or in Outlook. When you're new to the platform, it's a whole different world.
How do I get a token?
How do I get a token? What is the difference between a chat message and a channel message? There's so many of them, and within 10 days they were able to deliver what they wanted, and they actually did a testimony during our roundtable, just as hey folks, thank you so much. We were able to do that, and it was based on the needs of. We don't have a Go SDK. Go is becoming very popular. We're getting demand even from internal Microsoft. We're getting demand for Go, and we're getting it also from partners. We delivered it within 6 months. It's now in preview, and somebody was able to succeed with a preview build of our Go SDK, which this is where it's really rewarding. And I'm taking the credit. It's not even my product. Like, it's a product that is managed by another team member on my team. It's Maisa that handles that. But just the fact that our SDK story now empowers people, I think this is where it's the most rewarding.
Yeah,
that's cool. That's really cool.
So on the SDK, we touched the SDKs. We talked about the craft toolkit. Can you talk a bit about what does it mean that you're leading SDK and a craft toolkit work? What we talked about the fact that it's a lot of meeting, coordination of things, data analytics, but in practice, if there would be any youngsters out there who would be looking into, I want to be a program manager in the Microsoft Craft.
When I grow up, I want to be Seb.
Yeah. No, don't be Seb when you grow up. be more like Waldek or Vesa, but don't be like me.
But we're not building a product. At least I'm not.
That's actually a good question. I think the first thing you have to, I think what is being a product manager is to be able to feel empathy for your audience and try to deliver the value that they're expecting or that they need to be more productive. And that is even in technical audiences, which is mine. Like my audience is developers, but if you want to aim at accountants or any other type of roles or whatsoever, basically, if you can put yourself in the shoes of your audience and you love to understand deeply what they're doing, why they're doing it, how they're doing it, and if you have a mission of making them more productive or making them focus on the thing that matters. And that's one of the things that we think in the SDK world is there is no SDK developers. They're using an SDK because they want to do something else.
There are people who build an SDK.
Yeah. But this is a very, very limited pool of folks. But when a developer is using one of our tools, is because they want to do something else. They want to build a tool that will empower every single employee in their organization to be more productive. And this is it's kind of the flywheel effect. When you empower one person, usually it just starts, it spins, and everybody gets more productive. And I think if you're into helping the others, you love tech. I think being a product manager, you need to love some aspect of tech because I think that's what you're building in the end. Yes, there are meetings. Yes, there are emails. There are countless chat messages. Yes, there are challenges with time zones because you're working here. We're working in 3 different time zones, some in Europe, some here in America. But you know what? This is actually, for me, that's the other side of it, which is the beauty of it. It makes you meet tons of people from around the world, especially in an organization like Microsoft, where you just meet people from all around the world every single day. You empower your users. You have fun at work. I think that's what a product manager is, and that's why you want to become a product manager.
You mentioned something that you want to be on a mission to help others, and that makes me think, especially these days, we see a lot of impatience. You want to do something, you want to watch a movie, there's streaming service on and it's there. We don't need to wait. We barely need to wait for anything at all. How does that relate to you being on a mission? Because a mission to me is something like a longer term thing. It's not a week, it's not a month, maybe not even a year. To what extent do you need to say hey, I have this ambition in my head and I'm okay that's going to take 2, 3, 5 years, maybe a career even, to fix that, but that's okay. I'm going to commit to it. Sure, along the way, we will have wins. Maybe we'll lose some, but I dedicate myself to this as opposed to, I'm going to do this thing 6 months. Well, I'm bored. I'm going to do another thing. So to what extent do you need to have that commitment? Or does that play a role?
It 100% plays a role. I don't think you can. When you join a team, and you might be new to even to the mission of the team, right? Sometimes you land in a team and you're like, okay, I'm brand new. I'm a fresh grad. I'm totally new to that product thing. I think you need to embrace the vision, the culture, the mission of that organization. And I think every single decision, move, product, feature that you're shipping should play a role in that bigger mission. But don't think, and especially don't stress that, or don't overstress with the fact that what you're building right now might be a drop in the pound. But you know what? It's one drop in the pond that is one, and then somebody else will put one, and then somebody else will put one. And at some point, you're going to get a small pool, and then it's going to be it's going to be bigger and bigger.
It's going to get exactly.
And
it's
you know
the snowball effect, so to say.
Exactly, and play a role and be proud of it. Every single tiny bit that you ship, be proud of it. You've been working hard on this. There's when I ship a feature, there's probably 25 teams around me that are also somehow part of that feature that we need to celebrate. Be loud, be bold, talk about it, be collaborative with your folks. And I think that's how the mission is reminded to everybody, and that's how you basically say, this is how I embrace my mission, and this is how I move forward with that mission that we're going to achieve at some point. But usually a mission, it's hard to the Microsoft mission. Is that something we can say, cool, done? No.
We achieved more.
We achieved more.
We empowered people. It is a mission, not a goal, right?
Exactly.
It isn't a goal.
But that does for sure require a certain mindset, and to be able to think that way, that you basically, well, I love the one statement, which is you're changing the world one person at a time. Sure, it might be multiple persons still in a day. It might be hundreds of persons or thousands of persons in a day. But as we're humans, we're still reacting on humans. So you're basically changing one person at a time. And then that starts the snowball effect to actually rolling. So
there was the other day this interesting discussion where someone says, like, on the outside it comes often across as if a cultural change happens like overnight, like there's a boom, big bang thing. In reality, it happens one discussion at a time. Like we talk, and it's like, we spark a thought. And then we will talk to other folks, and that will then end up eventually becoming that change that we want to drive. But it starts with what? And it's one discussion at a time. And sure, maybe it's one to N, one to few. Maybe it's an event is a bigger thing, but it's one discussion at a time, right? There is no shortcut to that.
Yeah,
absolutely not.
And that's the one thing which we touched as well, like right before we started recording. What was the message? That was really good from Technorama.
Ship things, tell people.
Yeah, deliver things, tell people. I saw that on Twitter today.
Because it's actually
tell people. Yeah,
tell people. It's such a simple message. If you have the person name whose session it was, that was really good.
That is from Heather Downing. Yeah,
exactly.
Heather Downing. Exactly.
Just to mention Heather Downing here because we're stealing that message, but. Do things, tell people. It's not technically, if you want to change the world, if you want to do a bigger impact on things, doing things, absolutely. But you need to also tell people that you're doing things, because otherwise people cannot relate and they cannot commit on that mission. They don't understand necessarily why we're doing that. But then only telling, not doing, that's like, well, that doesn't work either. So you need to actually do both to be successful. So, and that's one thing what people unfortunately quite often forget about is we keep on shipping, cool, but you need to be really vocal on what you're doing, because otherwise how would the other people know? It's not in their day-to-day interest to scan internet or in GitHub or whatever when there's a new version available. You just need to be vocal. You need to tell people that there's a new version available to give them the opportunity to have a look if they're interested.
And even sometimes you're like, but that's such a tiny feature. But there might be one dev somewhere that has spent the last week fiddling with your thing. Yep. And he's been failing. And now if you tell him, that one thing is fixed, then it'll be finally I can go on my weekend.
Exactly.
And I'm gonna have I'm gonna be totally fine with it. And you changed one person this week, as you said.
Yeah.
Next week it's gonna be another set of folks. So
yep.
And it might be, a tiny feature for a product and a giant leap for developer kind.
Oh yeah.
Bad puns. We're here the whole week.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess it's the persistency and consistency and just keep on communicating and shipping, of course, as well. Having that right balance of things to be able to make things happen. Now, we're starting to run out of time a bit from a timing perspective, just making sure that we don't run overboard because of the other meetings as well. Now, anything interesting, what's happening on your world, Seb, during this week? What's happening? Anything what you can talk about? Now that the build is done, you can just go and relax,
There's a little bit of that, to be fairly honest. There's that. This week is a very interesting week. We're gonna probably close on our planning for the next semester on the Microsoft Graph team. So that's really, really cool. Now that we had all the feedback we needed, but all the feedback we got from build, super useful to infuse that feedback in some of the plans that we want to ship. So definitely that's going to be this. I'm going to also prepare myself to travel. Something incredible. So I am traveling to Redmond next week, where we're going to have our first offsite of the Microsoft Graph team in forever. I've been in the team for a year and a half, never actually met more than 90% of my colleagues face to face. So that's going to be great to finally meet some of that.
How tall everybody is.
Last week. I don't know how I came with that, but I was saying, finally, I'm gonna be able to put smells on faces. Usually, you would put like face on names, but now we have the face. So
but is it more polite to say a scent?
Yeah. There we go. That's my French background that mixed words. But that's gonna be amazing. And something else this week, I'm gonna have probably spend a little bit of time with my small family here. Now that I have a little son.
Congratulations, by the way, on that.
Thanks. So we're gonna spend some time here with the family, as I'm not gonna be there next week, so I'm going to definitely prioritize some of that time with the family to make sure that we're all well together, and then we're going to spend some time outside if the weather allows it. So definitely that's the thing. Nothing crazy shipping this week, except planning to be able to continue shipping really cool stuff in the next couple of months.
Cool. Really, really cool. Waldek, what about you? Anything interesting this week?
Always interesting stuff. So this week we are closing in on May, which means a new release of CLI for Microsoft 365 with new features and improvements and enhancements. And it's really cool to see, right? So in May, we welcome 2 new maintainers.
Yep.
And it's always, like, it never really occurred to me, but like in a way, like we're running a company. In a sense that, well, we're welcoming new people. They join the team. And sure, like we're not hiring and paying and all of that, but it's still a team with people with whom you work. And there's always this thing where new people join. You're always like, will it work? Like, what will be their impact on everybody else on a team, folks who've been longer? Because dynamics change. And it's so really cool to see, the energy goes up. We get new people and they're like, I want to help. Where do we go? And they come with tons new ideas. So we're like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like, why haven't we done this earlier? I mean, in a way, it's always the balance where you want to grow organically. Like you don't just want to keep adding more people, because like more people means more communication lines and alignment and all of that. But in this case, it panned out perfectly. Like we couldn't have wished for more. So it's really awesome to see the effect of that on all the work that we do, on the engagement, on GitHub, PRs, our internal comms within a team, new ideas. So, and all of that is coming to fruition now in the release. And beyond that, So that is really cool. And with that, like we hope that we will be able to, ship even more, like be faster, be more responsive, get back to folks in time when they have questions, when they're stuck, where they have PRs, just to, make it a great experience for everybody involved. And other than that, internally at Microsoft, it is planning time. So, thinking a lot together with other teams, what ideas they have, where we can work together, what are the different things that we think they could take into account when making their own plans. So it's very much the time where maybe you won't see us do or ship that much, but we're preparing now so that we can go twice as fast then, when we're and we're there. So that is that interesting time of year. Plus, indeed, catching breath after build.
Getting ready for autumn already at this point. That's basically the theme, almost, because
the autumn is summertime. Because in Australia it's already winter.
I know. Let me talk.
No,
in northern hemisphere it is summertime, so people are more and more away. But again, so and of course it's a less of a shipping period when it's summertime in northern hemisphere because of people prioritizing family, which is the right thing to do. So
but
for
it's
sure.
Also cool, right, that we're not limited to just that, right? Because we work, and our teams, I guess, are all over the world, right? Like my team spans from Hawaii to Australia. We're literally all over the globe. So there is no stopping and not shipping because, well, somebody is working. Like one team has the vacation, the other does not, right?
Yep,
so there's
absolutely.
also this cool thing that we can better cater to our audience's needs because like some of us are away when that audience is away, but that audience isn't away, and that's cool because a part of our team isn't away too. So there's always somebody to pick up the phone if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, so considering what we were just saying, it's a bit of a slow time period because everybody is doing planning, and a bit of a less shipping. Of course, it's not like everybody goes away and nothing's going to happen. There's a lot of stuff happening still.
Yeah.
SharePoint Framework 1.15 is coming out within 2 weeks. Release candidate coming out on this week. So with JavaScript SDK 3.0 support for Graph as an example. Thank you, Seb, on helping on that one, and a lot of other things as well. So there's a constant flow of things. And by the way, Seb, I'll be on Redmond on the same week. See?
Ooh, that's dangerous.
And you will not have any time to see each other because meetings.
That could be the case as well. So it's just realities of life as well.
At least for a coffee. I know Vesa will be there. Will be awake early because of jet lag. So we'll just catch up like at 6 a.m. for a coffie.
Yep.
At the airport.
Absolutely.
Maybe.
But yeah, so but that's next week. That's not this week. So but let's see. I'm by the way arriving on Tuesday, flying out on Friday. So it's been 2.5 years since I visited office for a while. So
you still have a desk?
They've been telling me that anytime we will have a desk here whenever you want. But it's like
okay.
no, I don't know.
Whatever you do, don't give me a desk. I don't want a desk.
But it's all good. But anyway, thank you, Seb, on this one. After this interview, we'll jump on the weekly articles. We go quickly through a lot of the announcements in Build from last week. There was a lot of stuff getting announced, which was super cool as well. But thank you, Seb. Really cool discussion. And we'll follow up on the episode 200. Now you're booked for hosting the episode 200. So
I'm absolutely ready. I already have my list of questions and
I think we need to prep.
Guest appearances and special house band and all of that. We're gonna make sure we have some party
dress code.
It's gonna be still a while, so it's more than 6 months. So, but there's plenty of time to actually get prepared for it. So it's good.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Bi-weekly. Or like twice
a week.
Twice a weekly.
Twice a weekly.
Oh, I love this. Cool. Thanks for having me, folks. It was great to be here.
Thank you, Seb. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Seb.
Awesome.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Excellent. Thank you, Seb, on that one. Really, really cool. And good to catch up and good to have a discussion on the future direction as well. So it's actually really cool to have a discussion right after build, so we can actually openly talk about all the latest and coolest thing, right? So
yes,
rather than
definitely
we have cool stuff, we can't talk about it. So
well, so when is this going live? So maybe we could, but maybe not.
Exactly.
None of that.
Now, just from a timing perspective, let's actually jump on the articles as well, and we will cover a lot of the build announcements. And just to recap where those announcements are being listed, we're not going to go all of them through one by one because that would not make any sense. But let's call out a few of the main announcements and main cool things which we clearly have seen have got a lot of attention within the last week. We are recording this on 13th, so week after the build. So first of all, the primary build announcement article was around from Jeff Teeper around build collaborative apps with Microsoft Teams, and really focuses, well, not only on Microsoft Teams, of course, across the Microsoft 365 platform, which might be a bit confusing because we seem to be now using Teams first, but quite often it's much more than that. So Teams is a super critical and strategic application for us, and that's why it's being always in the front of in the messaging. But there's a lot of announcement in other areas as well, and many of them, of course, are associating and as related on the Microsoft Teams for sure. So first of all, we have the live share, which is really cool. It is a really cool video showing how people can actually integrate, collaborate together in a live share mode, so they can basically at the same document they can see other people actually working on the same thing, which is really cool. Absolutely brilliant concept of not having just a meeting chit-chatting with people, but actually working in the on those assets and designs and all of that stuff, which is really cool. Fluid Framework and Azure Fluid Relay general availability. Fluid Framework has been in works for quite a few years. We announced that in, I would say, builds whenever we were still in-person builds as a first time, as a preview, and now it's actually going to go in GA, which is great. So congratulations, Fluid Framework team. There's also a create loop components by you updating adaptive components by updating adaptive cards. Create loop components by updating adaptive loop. Interesting title. Anyway, what it means is that you can use loop components in your adaptive cards in the Teams and in other solutions as well, which basically Fluid Framework is the technology which the loop components are using, just to clarify that one as well. And then introducing Microsoft Azure Communication Services Sample App Builder. That's basically for integrating your solution to Microsoft Teams without running in the Teams. So here we can see the integration between for example, the person who's using the Microsoft Teams and then connecting to a business from a website. So this is the doctor you're connecting to. So actually a pretty cool setup. The Microsoft Azure Communication Services is really interesting, actually. Makes it super easy to consume Microsoft Teams capabilities. A lot of improvements in Graph. There's a new version coming from SharePoint Framework and Microsoft Viva Connection quite soon as well. So a lot of investments there as well. Approvals extensibility. And then, of course, the Teams Toolkit and the implementations type of Teams application, they can now be actually used in the Outlook as well, which is quite cool. So across the Microsoft 365. So really cool setup for sure. And you can use the Teams Toolkit to actually create those kind of solutions. So super cool stuff as well. Teams Toolkit is also GA, so a lot of stuff there, and a lot of Powerapps and Power Platform announcement in builds, right, Waldek? So a lot of that new stuff in there as well. And of course, the monetization, a lot of stuff and in announcements there on that side as well, and a lot of additional references. Like I said, we're not going to go super detailed on all of the articles today, because we don't want to spend time on recapping, because this is kind of the primary list of things, and then the secondary primary announcement, I guess, is this one. You want to talk about this one a bit?
Right. So basically, we have this new way to build customer-facing or public-facing pages on Power Platform, and it's a great step towards empowering makers to build customer-facing resources, right? Because up until now, it was very much inside, right? So like you would build a Power App that helps you or your team or your org to improve the workflow, and with this step, like we have now the ability to build externally facing assets. So that is really an interesting step. And I'm curious to learn like how folks perceive that and see that used in practice.
Yep, that's really cool stuff as well. Now, related on all of this announcement, then we have a specific blog post on the specific areas of the build announcement. So there was a lot of news announcement last week related on build. For example, on the preview on the virtual endpoints and graph APIs. It's a good blog post in the Teams blog related on all of those capabilities. We also had a specific blog post related on the live share, which we already talked about within the Jeff's note. We also have a specific blog post from Ben Summers related on all of the different Microsoft Graph announcements, which is really, really cool. A lot of improvements there, with additional videos as well. So this is actually really, really cool. So Aika Bass, for example, is having a discussion with Rabeb related on the updates on the Graph Toolkit and what those are and why did we do them and how did we do them and all of that. So a lot of additional insights on what's available on the Microsoft Graph. So really, really great stuff on there. We also had an update on the Office, specific updates on the Office add-ins, because there's a lot of improvements on that side as well, across Excel and Office add-ins and the ribbon bars, and so much stuff is happening. Quite often what happens is that we're announcing all of the new stuff in Build, and then there's overwhelming amount of new features, right? From Microsoft Graph connectors, an update on that side as well. A lot of connectivity improvements and features and capabilities there as well. Thank you, James, on that update. And then Tomomi really focuses on the Microsoft Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio Code, which is the GA version. The Visual Studio IDE version of Microsoft Teams Toolkit is not yet GA, so that's going to GA a bit later. But Tomomi talks about all of the great features in this toolkit. And a few more. This isn't actually about the build, right? Dan Balin had this article where you were actually involved as well, right?
Yeah, great. So I think that this go live coincides with build. So at build or during build timeframe, we released this new set of docs, right, that are really meant to guide enterprise app leaders, BDMs to think about how can they build applications on Microsoft Cloud? Like what are the different options? And really not in the very low level tech stack, but more about like what is the offering of the Microsoft Cloud, and what is like how would you use in an enterprise combination of Azure, Power Platform, GitHub, DevOps, Microsoft 365, MX, right? So how would you tie all of them into an application that you would build for your org?
Yep.
So this is a very interesting set of docs that are meant more as a guidance in thinking and how would you architect that, and not really like specific things for devs with code examples. So we hope that this will help that audience envision more applications that they could build on the Microsoft Cloud.
Absolutely, because like we talked so many times, it's not necessarily the developers making decisions on what we build. It's the architects and technical decision makers, and that this is the audience. That's the audience for this article and this document.
Well, yeah, and I mean, this could even go to CIOs, CETOs, right? Who want to understand more of technology stack and how they can get really the benefit out of the Microsoft Cloud for building apps for their org.
Yep, absolutely, makes perfect sense. Really, really cool stuff. And then we had this book of news. So every single year in Microsoft Build, we release also the book of news, because there's like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of announcements. What happens quite often is that it's really, really hard to follow up on all of the different things which are getting announced. And book of news is basically the one go-to asset of having everything what is announced within the Microsoft Build, which clearly is a lot of things. So, but that's really, really good assets to actually go through as well. Now, on the list formatting side, we had Tetsuya had a blog post in Microsoft 365 Platform Community blog related on view the contents of a file with the preview card. And this is really, really cool list formatting. So basically, not a pop-up, but a panel kind of a pop-up. It's not a Windows pop-up, but a panel pop-up in the window in the files to be able to preview what's inside of specific file. That's a really, really cool layout. So for sure.
It is.
And that's, of course, available in the GitHub. Now, the Marcus Miller had a new blog post around Teams meeting apps.
Exactly. So a new sample around Teams apps that are made for use in meetings. And this time around, it's about voting. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's about using the stage view to how can you vote on movies. I think that And that is the use case here. And again, it's a great example that goes really deep into the code, showing exactly the code you would build and write. So these are really great if you're looking into either building an e-meetings app for Teams, or you want to experiment, or you want to have a sample that you might show others. These articles by Marcus are really great place to start because they show that in practice. And I think there's always a sample available for you to pull in and try. So these are really, really great.
Great stuff once again, Marcus. So thank you for that. And then Peter Venstra had a blog post related on create an app using a new image import in Powerapps. And this was one of the announcements from Microsoft Build, where you can actually draw a file and draw a drawing, which is basically then being scanned inside of the Powerapps. So you can actually kind of mimic or draw a mock-up of your application in a paper, and then you can scan that to be a real application in the Powerapps. So kind of a cool, really, really cool feature of getting started on things. So cool stuff, really cool. And then Stefan had a new blog post.
Exactly, as explaining. So in SCSS that you use in Spfx, there's this ability that you can import other style sheets with tilde, right? So the character at the front of the path. And he explains what it's for, how it works, when you would use it. So if you work with SPFX, there's definitely a good thing to know, even though you might not use it immediately.
Yeah,
it's good to keep in the back of your mind why it's there, what it's for, so that in case you need it, you can use it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then we had our Paula Pialorsi had a new blog post related on using PnP placeholder controls in the SPFX solution. And placeholder control is basically the control which you can use easily to provide these kind of controls and messages and all of that stuff when you're adding the web part on a page. There's a version, actually, if I remember correctly, there's a version out of the box on this, but then this is more advanced to do a different kind of configurations as a control for the web parts and tabs, which are using the SharePoint framework. On April's side, there was a new video as well.
Exactly, and she again, so this is a video that shows the new ability to, again, import drawings to Powerapps to start building your app, right? So if your drawing skills are like mine, you don't go beyond the stick figures and all that, you could become a designer of apps, right? You could really easily build apps. I mean, in real world, I can imagine like this being a really great way to take the, back of a napkin designs and turn it into a workable app, right? So even if the app wouldn't be functional yet, it's a really great step to draw something quickly, scan it with your phone, and then use that as a starting point to build the first step to make it interactive. And with that, have something that is closer to the finished app eventually, because oftentimes it's so much easier to envision how it will work than just talk to a napkin, right? Like, hey, imagine this would move. Like you cannot always see these interactions. So this is a really great way towards making it easier to prototype, really.
Yep, absolutely. It will certainly speed up the prototyping of things and proof of concepts and proving that things are workable. So really, really cool stuff. And then the final video from Shane Young is around AI Builder, invoice processing for Powerapps, and Power Automate. So how do we actually integrate a bit of artificial intelligence on handling the files as the files are coming in? In this case, we're using the scenario is around the files within a SharePoint. So we're basically adding a file in the SharePoint, then we are scanning the file, we are automating the creation of the attributes and detecting the values and then doing approvals of all of that. So really cool stuff and a cool looking application for sure. Really nice looking UI. We're getting there. It's getting better and better actually with Powerapps. Cool. Anyway, that's all of the video, or not videos, but all of the articles this week. Primarily, really focusing on the Microsoft Build. So a lot of new stuff there on the Microsoft Build side. And please have a look on all of the Build of news, all of that stuff as well. But considering the long discussion with Seb, I guess it's time to close up for this one. We'll come back with another
PnP Weekly. Seb, right?
Yes. But we'll come back with a PnP Weekly within a week. So see you later. Thanks for watching. Please use hashtag PnP Weekly in Twitter to be able to catch up on what you're doing as well. Thank you. Cheers.
Bye.